And welcome back to the Leeds Lens as we discuss the latest Leeds United news. And we've got a few things actually to get into today. Well, first of all, we're going to be talking about the change of system that potentially Leeds United need to do. And I've seen this, to be honest, all over social media today. I've seen it from YouTubers, I've seen it on Twitter, I have seen it everywhere. People talk about the different system that Leeds United should play. So I thought it's pretty relevant news, to be honest, and we'll have a little talk about it. I also, as well, want to talk a bit about Ramazani's situation. There's a few reports coming in that potentially he could be recalled by Leeds United in January. So I want to talk a bit about that as well. And also, we want to talk, and I will talk a bit about a Celtic winger who has been linked to Leeds United too, from Tunisian reports of all places. He is Tunisian though, so maybe there is something in that. So that is going to be the news today, and obviously you will understand. Well, we are a bit earlier today. Well, we're a bit early today because, of course, it is the Champions League at 8 p.m. this evening, and I feel like, does anyone actually want to watch? With the greatest respect, can I compete against Liverpool versus Real Madrid? Might be tricky. So I think when there's big Champions League games on, I might go and do the time at 7:30 or maybe 7 o'clock, just to allow you guys to watch this and potentially the Champions League as well. Although I do know some people who watch this also watch the football at the same time. So just let me know. But we're going to try 7:30 this evening. But yeah, let's get on with the show and start with the first story. We'll actually start with the Ramazani story. And basically, as I said, reports are coming in that potentially he actually could be recalled in January. And I think fundamentally there is probably reasons for this. First of all, he's not really playing at Valencia. I know he's had an injury. Obviously started on fire with that. I think it was Getafe they played in the first game. Came off the bench, got an assist. Every Leeds fan on the planet was saying, why have we let him go? Look what he's doing in his first appearance off the bench. And he gets an assist instantly coming on that right-hand side. But then since then, it hasn't really worked for him. He still hasn't actually started a game for Valencia. I did wonder, to be honest, and I've said this a few times, if when we went for Ramazani, if we actually went too high with the level. And I wonder the same with Joseph as well. Should we have sent Ramazani to a lower level Spanish league club, the way he's going to potentially play minute after minute after minute? Because let's be honest, what's the point of him sat on Valencia's bench if he could be actually sat on Leeds United's bench when we have been short at times in this season, especially out wide? Like, you even look at the Burnley game, of course, when we're starting Jack Harrison and Brendan Aronson as our two wingers. Well, Ramazani, obviously, in that game, for me, would have been a better option than either of them wingers. So what is the point in him playing for Valencia on the bench when we could have him on our bench is I think, a logical point to this. I think the other situation is, naturally, if you're going to send a player on loan, you're going to want them to get minutes, aren't you, fundamentally? So even if we don't want them, and Daniel Farke's still not keen on having Ramazani in the football club, because I don't think he likes the way certain characteristics that Ramazani's got in terms of his creative spark, but in terms of how rash he can be at times on the ball, and we know Ramazani does like to lose the ball. Naturally, that comes from a creative element and a creative spark, because he's trying to make something happen, which loses the ball. But that's something that we clearly know that Daniel Farke doesn't like about Ramazani. So, if he's not going to come back to Leeds United, could we send him elsewhere on loan where he's actually going to play more minutes? Because obviously, fundamentally, we are trying to rise the profile of Ramazani with this loan move. If that's to come back into Leeds United squad, or if that's obviously to sell for a certain profit. But obviously, if he's not playing, that doesn't help anybody. At the moment, to be honest, this loan is a complete waste of time. And if we're being totally honest, all the loans at the moment are all going horrendously badly, except Joe Geller, who's obviously having a fantastic time at Hull. I know Joseph scored 2 recently in an away game, but for the most part, that's been a pretty poor loan. He's not been involved in the first team for Mallorca week in, week out, which is what we wanted. Wobers, I think, has been injured as well. Schmidt's been in and out of the Werder Bremen team as well. So loan players we've messed up on. And I think, to be honest, the loan thing in general is something that Leeds United have messed up on as a blanket statement. I mean, where's our loan additions in the actual starting 11 for Leeds United this summer? Everyone's talked about it on the channel before, and they're absolutely right. Where are the loan additions into our actual team? So never mind the players we're loaning out to the wrong clubs, arguably, but where are our actual loans in our team? So the 49ers fundamentally have messed that up part of the transfer window. I think if you're looking at the two fails of the transfer window, one has got to be the loan market and how we explored it, and one has got to be the selling market and how we sold players, because them two, I think, were mismanaged in the summer, for sure. But yeah, I think Ramazani is now at a point in time with his sort of his Leeds United career and his now Valencia career where we're going to have to recall him. I think we're going to have an honest conversation, probably with Valencia and with maybe Carlos Corberán involved in that conversation, obviously the Valencia manager, and look at where his minutes are going to be in the second half of the season, because he can't really afford to have a first half of the season like he's like in the second half of the season again. And if that is going to be the case, we've got to get him out of there, in my opinion. But again, this is probably going to cost money to do that, and to remove Ramazani from Valencia as well. I would imagine that the clause does contain sort of numerical value to it as well. So that's something to bear in mind, especially with Leeds United's PSR position being so tight. But I think fundamentally, for the player's benefit, he's either going to have to come back to Leeds United or he's going to have to go on loan somewhere else. And I think this is where I think the 49ers are sort of going back and forth with it potentially at times, because I think there's potential understanding in the boardroom level. And I think this is why he was probably loaned out in the first place, that when we talked about it yesterday, if Daniel Farke was to lose his next two games, which we've talked about, with it being Forest away and Villa at home, then we know we've got Liverpool, Chelsea and Man City back to back to back. And then you could have lost 6 on the trot and Daniel Farke might not be the manager anymore. So then you look at the January transfer window and you go, well, Ramazani could come back into the 11. So I think this decision about what to do with Ramazani when we recall him is something probably not for now, and it's going to be bearing on where we are in the January window. Who's the manager of the football club? Do they actually want Ramazani in charge? Not that I think Daniel Farke's going to be sacked. I just think we're getting closer actually to potentially an outcome with that, maybe in the next sort of few months or so, obviously going into this January market. So I think this is something, that conversation is something to hold fire on, but it's definitely something to bear in mind, that there could be a situation where Daniel Farke is removed from his post if results do go well for him in the next two. We talked about it yesterday. And then, of course, that could be an opportunity then for Ramazani to potentially come back into the Leeds squad. So that's the update on Ramazani. I'm interested to know, by the way, in the comments, what you guys think about Ramazani. I know we've got a lot of love in the fan base for Ramazani, but he's still never really fulfilled, I think, his talent potential at Leeds United so far, or at Valencia by the sounds of it as well. So, yeah, I'm hoping for a bit more from Ramazani, but yeah, I know he's a player that's very well liked. Anyway, let's move on to the next story. And we'll talk a bit about the Celtic winger who has been linked to Leeds United today, called, I'm going to butcher the name, so I'm going to try. He's a Celtic Tunisian, should I say? Don't know, they're not even the same. I don't even know where that's come from. A Tunisian winger, and this actually coming in from a Tunisian report as well, suggesting that actually Leeds United could be look for the Celtic winger in the January transfer window. For a bit of context regarding him, he's managed 1 goal so far this season in the SPL. I think he scored 2 in the Scottish League Cup as well this season for Celtic, so he's doing okay. I'm not convinced this is the one. I think this is potentially something where it's naturally, we've talked about it so many times. When you're looking at transfers, there's reasons why people are linked to Leeds United other than it actually being the truth. And I think with this is potentially just a client journalist sort of situation where they're trying to spark up interest in their particular client. So what you link into a Premier League club, you link into a big Premier League club in Leeds United, and it sparks up interest in the player. So I don't see this one materialising. I also think, to be honest, if Leeds United were pursuing this as a deal, I don't think this is the one for us at this moment in time. He's a right-footed winger, and I know we need a winger, and people say, well, Scott, we need a winger. We do. For me, I've always said this. I want a right winger, and I want a left-footed right winger. We have got so many right-footed wingers at this football club, and I think for a different profile and something to offer something different, a left-footed right winger will be something really interesting to add to this profile. I think he's better than Okafor. Okay, to be fair, I haven't watched much of him, if I'm being totally honest. But I think Okafor's had quite a good time of it, so I won't be wanting to take Okafor out. But even if he is better than Okafor, I would suggest that maybe that's not the player to improve, is it? I think when you look at sort of Leeds United's wingers at this moment in time, it's the right-hand side winger that's the problem, not the left-hand side winger. Okafor, for me, was our best player and has been our best winger comfortably this season. He's also our top scorer. So I don't think you're going to bring Okafor out. I think if you're looking for a new player to bring into the football club, for me, it's got to be a right winger. As I said, for me, the ideal player is Harry Wilson, a left-footed right winger, something different, someone who can be a bit of a creator as well, because I think we've got sort of Okafor, who's more of a goal-scoring winger. He likes to cut inside and have a shot and tries to make goal-scoring actions occur, whereas I think Harry Wilson, yes, he score goals like he has this season so far, but he's also a very creative winger, can take a set piece, can do other parts. I think he's a different sort of profile of winger. So I would like to, that's the one I would like. I still think that's a really good option. I still am annoyed that we didn't get that one over the line in the summer, if I'm being totally honest. So do you really want to bring someone in from the SPL, with the greatest respect to that league? I think, to be honest, if If it's a player we're bringing in from the SPL, I would expect them to be absolutely smashing it in that division, if I'm being totally honest, to make the transfer into the Premier League. Like, I remember James Forrest at Celtic a few years ago, and he was absolutely flying in the SPL. Maybe that's someone you could bring in. Someone that's got 1 goal in 6, with the greatest respect. I know it's not all about GA, and there's more to football in GA. Of course there is. But with the greatest respect, someone that's got 1 goal in 6 in the SPL this season is not my theory of Leeds United's player that's going to come in and revolutionise our season on the right-hand side, if I'm being totally honest. And that people might have watched him more than I have, and fair enough. I can't say I've watched him, so I don't fully know. But from the data and the stuff I've looked at, is he someone that's going to come in and revolutionise our season? For me, probably not. Is a fundamental situation. He might be better than Okafor, as you said, but I just, again, we want a right winger, don't we? We don't really want a left winger. As I said, it's just not the right profile. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. I just don't think this is a goer. I really don't. So yeah, that is the update there, as I just kicked my bin. Nice one, Scott. Anyway, let's move on to the next bit. And this is where I wanted to get to with the show, if I'm being totally honest. And the bits I wanted to talk about tonight, which is around about sort of where Leeds United are at. And we talked about it yesterday in terms of we think the squad's not potentially at the level. But when I've been listening to people online today talk, I think a few people have mentioned this, so I don't want to sort of reel off so many names. But it's been mentioned online, it's been mentioned everywhere, to be honest, this evening, or this day, which is about sort of where Leeds United are at and how fundamentally, even if we don't think the squad is good enough, which I know some people don't agree with, don't think it is, and I'm probably maybe in that camp as well. I get why the squad isn't good enough, but I'm not sure it fully is. But how can we get the best out of this squad? What is the way of playing that will see the best results with this particular team? Because I think what we've seen so far this season is 2 contrasting styles, and one for me working adamantly better than the other, sort of throughout the whole time. And I think the style that's obviously not worked so far this season is this sort of methodical, short passing build-up that we've seen from Daniel Farke, sort of since his tenure at Leeds United so far. And I think fundamentally the reason for that is, and you can probably see it on the team that we've actually got on the sort of right-hand side of the screen there, is that in our midfield, we don't have technical players in the midfield. Longstaff is a runner, and he's also someone who's a really good tackler. But you I even saw the other day something that got popped up on Sky Sports about progressive passes and line-breaking passes, and he was really poor for line-breaking passes, Longstaff. And I think that's a data point to suggest what I'm seeing, but I can see it with the eye test. Longstaff is not someone who progresses the ball very well. He's fantastic off the ball. He's a fantastic tackler. He's a great runner. He's got a fantastic engine. He can deliver a decent set piece, as we've seen. He can sort of get in the box and score goals at times as well, which we've seen, but he's not someone who's going to pick the ball up and progress the ball through the lines in a tight scenario. I think the only player we've got in the midfield who's fantastic at that is probably Elias Tounekti, but even him against Brighton really struggled. So if we've got a team then based on runners, and if we've got a team based on physicality, which I think we've got, we need to play to that strength fundamentally. If you've got a team, for example, if you've got a prime Pep team. So if you've got Barcelona of old, the 2010 Barcelona team with Busquets, Xavi and Iniesta as your midfield 3. Say they're your midfield 3 as an example. You're probably not going to play a long ball to David Villa and get knockdowns to Xavi, Iniesta and Busquets. That's probably not the way you're going to play, because you're going to suit your playing squad. Exactly. I'm sure we all agree with that. So what do Leeds United do? Well, we ain't got a Xavi, Busquets and Iniesta sort of midfield in terms of profile. But what we have got, as I said, is powerful runners. So we've got to play to that advantage. And I think when you've seen the best of this Leeds United team so far, it's when we've been utilising the midfield in the greatest way possible and using that physicality in the midfield. And how do Leeds United do that? It's by going long and winning second balls. The best games I've seen from Leeds United and the best spell I've seen from Leeds United this season was Bournemouth. After they scored from about the half an hour point to about the 60th minute, I thought we were fantastic. I thought that 30-minute spell, if we can get to that level, we will be absolutely fine this season. Genuinely, that's how good it was. And we scored, obviously, 2 goals in that moment. I think we could have had a few more goals, but we're fantastic. And how did that happen? Well, we went long as fundamental. We played into Calvert-Lewin. He won the ball. We got Longstaff. We got Stack in that game, in and around Calvert-Lewin. So when the ball dropped down into the midfield, they were there to pick it up and beat sort of Tyler Adams, who was playing in that game, to the ball, and then we could go straight at the back 4. Because what Leeds United can't do at this moment in time is we can't play through the lines. We're just not good enough. And that's fine. I don't expect us to be good enough for everything on a pitch. But Daniel Farke, for me, has got to recognise what this team's makeup is and what our strengths are, and we've just got to play along. And people might not like that, and people might think it's boring. I don't think it is boring, actually. I think we've seen at times this year when we've played long. I even look at the Newcastle game. I know it ended 0-0, but I thought in the best phase of the game for Leeds United, going long was really effective, and it was really exciting to watch, I felt. Yes, we didn't have the break and the luck, I think, in that game, and we made some poor decisions when the knockdowns came. But when Calvert-Lewin's on it, and you can use him and utilise him for a long ball system and go into him and play off him, it's been fantastic to watch, and it's been really, really effective for Leeds United, because it negates the fact. There's two reasons why you do it. One, you get the ball over their midfield, so you don't have to progress it through the midfield. But the other benefit is, and which is what we saw against Brighton, is if you lose it when you go long, it's much more difficult for the other team then to go and score a goal themselves, because they pick the ball up from the centre. Say against Bournemouth, they pick the ball up from the centre half, so Senesi or Diakite would pick it up at centre half, as opposed to them winning it like Brighton did in the midfield, and then coming straight out back at Leeds United. Because then, as I said, they've got to do more passes to get into our final third. Whereas what happened at Brighton all the time is the ball went into Tanaka, it went into Longstaff, they lost it in the midfield, and then they were straight on our straight at our back four, Brighton, because naturally they're the last line of the midfield as such. So that was a fundamental problem, and it showed that we couldn't do that. So we've got to beat the press, and we've got to go over the press and play off Calvert-Lewin, who is fantastic at holding the ball up. That is what Leeds United have got to do. We've got to play to our strengths, and we've got to accept who we are at times, and where this team is capable for. Jack says, evening, Scott, evening to you too. Fanstingo 78 said, it needs to be a 3-5-2 with Pro up front with DCL, especially at home. Our home form could keep us up. I disagree. I don't like the 3-5-2. I've talked about it enough times, but fundamentally, you are always left. You're left. We don't need three at the back, in my opinion. I don't think we need to play three at the back. You play three at the back if you're not good enough defensively. And all right, people might go, we're not good enough defensively at this moment. I think we can be good enough defensively in a 4-back system. The other reason I don't want to play a 3-back is because somewhere else on the pitch you are left short. If you play 3 at the back, somewhere else you're left short. You either play 3-5-2, as you said there, Fandingo, and you end up in a position where their full-backs are marked by nobody, or you play a 3-4-3, and then in the midfield, you're left in a 2 versus 3 because everyone plays a 4-3-3, or most teams play a 4-3-3. So wherever you're doing, however you play a 3-back, you end up in a situation where you are outnumbered either in the midfield or their defensive line is naturally going to outnumber your attacking line. So I just don't like it. I just don't think it ever works. And I think it can work. I just also don't think we've got the personnel for it either. Like, you look at Crystal Palace, they are built up for that system. We are not. We've also got a manager who, by the way, has barely ever played a 3-back. I think I remember playing it once away at Chelsea with Norwich, and they got beat about 7-0 because they matched up Chelsea at the time, who were playing a 5-back under Thomas Tuchel, of course. So I just don't like the 3-back. I don't think we've got the manager for it. I don't think the manager will want to play that. Don't think we've got the personnel for it. And I also don't like the idea of Perot up front with DCL, if I'm being totally honest. If you're going to play a 3-5-2, in my opinion, if you had to do it, you'd put Okafor up with DCL, if I'm being totally honest. I don't see Perot working as a blanket statement in this level. I just don't see it. And I think there's a reason he's been sort of outed out of the squad, because he's just never going to work on a physicality basis. So I don't like the 3-5-2, but I do think going long, hitting DCL is exactly how it's going to work. But there's a few things that have got to work for that to happen. The ball into DCL has got to be good fundamentally, and DCL has to win the knockdown, because last weekend against Brighton he was awful. He didn't win the knockdown enough, and I think that causes tons of problems. Whereas when we've been at our best, DCL's had a fantastic game in terms of hold-up play, in terms of build-up. And we've seen the same with Nemecha. He had a good game against Newcastle in terms of holding the ball up. I just think, fundamentally, DCL's a bit more mobile than Nemecha, so that's why I would play him. I also think he's just a better striker, fundamentally, as well. So I would stick with Dominic Calvert-Lewin up front. We've got to get the press, and we've got to go over the top of it. For me, it's probably the only way we stay up, because if we try play through teams, it will not work. We're just not good enough in the midfield to do that. Our midfielders are not competent enough on the ball to be able to see the passes. Spurs have the same issue, by the way. So let's not. This is not a huge criticism on Leeds United. Spurs have exactly the same issue. Paulinho at Spurs cannot do that role because he's not good enough on the ball. Same with Longstaff at us. He's not good enough on the ball to do that. Longstaff has his attributes, but he's not. That's not his attributes. And as I said, we've built a team to play a long ball system, yet we're now trying to not play that, which is a concern. So I think that will help us fundamentally throughout the season. The only concern I've got with it, and might be music to the likes of PSF and Easy Hears, who obviously are not a fan of Daniel Farke, is if we are going to play a long ball approach game, are we better with a manager who does a long ball system? I don't want Daniel Farke sat. I've said this enough times, but if we are going to play a long ball system, which I think a lot of people have said today that we should do, and I know a lot of people in the chat have talked about this as well. If we are going to play that, should we pick a manager that would suit that style more? I think that is a question. Although, as I said, we have seen at times Farke do it. So we'll have to wait and see. But we've got tricky games coming up now. Forest will be a tricky game, regardless of where they are in the division. That will be a hard game. Obviously, Villa are in an unbelievable vein of form at this moment. That'll be a tricky game. And then we've got 3 really hard games. And let's be honest, if we're playing against Man City away, trying to play through them, I dread to think what that score could be. It'll be another Arsenal, won't it, if we're being totally honest. Anyway, thanks all for watching, as always. I hope you've enjoyed the show. If you could drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff does massively help the channel. I keep forgetting to ask, but and I know people don't like me asking, but I just seem to get more likes if I do. So I think people forget to like, which I completely get, or just don't want to like it. You don't have to like, but so yeah, if you could like, and there's this new thing called Hype as well, which you've probably heard YouTubers mention. If you could do that as well, it does massive up the channel. But other than that, I shall catch you all tomorrow for some more Leeds United news. See you later, everybody, and fundamentally, bye for now. Oh, and enjoy the Real Madrid game as well. I hope it's